Good morning. Can everyone hear me? My name's Kirk Christian. I'm the collections manager for the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And we're going to be talking about team and project and management and organization. And in 2006, I moved from the East Coast to the Midwest to be the head preparator to kind of a mid-sized museum. And it was clear early on that there needed to be a lot of changes, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to do that. And one of the issues I saw is there was no tiered hierarchy. It was me and the staff, and it just did not seem to be a kind of a workable situation. And as I kind of slowly looked into that and figured out what I was going to do, a couple of years later at the first PAC-In conference in Williamstown, Massachusetts, at the end of the conference, they asked for a show of hands, like who fell under what department, whether it was registration or a standalone department or conservation or curatorial, which I thought was kind of mind-blowing. I just never had thought of those different types of organization. And not that one may be stronger than the other. I think it's dependent on the players involved, obviously, but it did make me think about that a lot. And a couple of years after that, on a trip to London, I interviewed Mark Slattery here about these topics. And though I may not be able to go in depth as much as I would like to, given the time and the number of people we have, I think we can touch on some of the key ones, which are like, how are you organized? These are people that lead big teams, and while that's not as much my role anymore, it's still a great interest to me. So without talking any more about that, I'd like to get on to the questions so we have enough time to maybe touch on some of these other things. I think if I could just go down the line, and if you could introduce yourselves first and tell everyone what your current position is and who you manage and supervise, that kind of thing.
Okay. Don't know if it's working. No? Okay. Well, my name is Kees van der Meijerakker. I'm head of collection management and conservation, restoration and preservation of the Van Gogh Museum here in Amsterdam. And, well, we had a lot of working people in the museum itself. It's something about almost 500. And although we are rather small, it's a rather small museum, maybe you visited it. And we also have a very small collection. But on the other hand, a lot of things are happening. So we have a lot of loans. We have a lot of changing in the permanent exhibition because of that small collection. The other department we have is collection and research. That's a little bit different from collection management and also conservation and research. So that's divided. And an educational department, a library, social, of digitalization, and I forgot one, I think. And it's all under the umbrella of museum affairs. And so we have a director of museum affairs, and that's one of the 6 directors we have in the museum. So a general director, a business director, and 3 directors, 1 of the museum itself, and 2 for the buildings and the money, and the other for marketing and communication. So it's rather a big organization. And in the Department of Collection Management and Conservation, there are 17 people working to take care of the collection. Without the conservators is almost 9, a photographer and 5 or 6 conservators. So that's all what we are doing, and well, it's a very nice museum to work, and we have to work very hard. That's not a pity, but we like it. But there is also all kind of other responsibilities like couriers. Every transport, every painting or work of art of the museum is couriered by one of the staff. So it's a lot of work to do also outside the collection.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. That one isn't working also. Technique. I'm Mark Bongaerts. I'm responsible for collection care technicians at the Stedelijk Museum. We are with a staff of 4 permanent and 6, I think, temporary, 6, 7, 8 sometimes, but 6 is the number that we're using a lot. Our staff is based at our offsite storage, and that makes it difficult for me to manage, because I have to manage 2 groups of people with different kind of tasks, and that makes it in communication and sometimes in meeting difficult, especially when there's exhibitions going on, exhibitions building or de-installing. That makes it difficult. I'm how you call it? I'm directly below our head of collections management, and she's got several departments under her. It's the conservation department, that's I think the biggest, the registrars, the exhibitions installations, library, collection registration, and offsite storage. What our tasks is packing, unpacking, internal transport during installation, de-installation, and taking care of our collection, new acquisitions, making mounts for them, package. We're making our own crates for them. So in our offsite storage, those 3 that are staff are constantly building crates, doing packing for loans, and we do a lot of couriering. And when something is really heavy, big, or awkward or technical to install, we also take care of that. So that's more or less what we're doing. There's a lot more, but okay.
My name is Wim Hoeben. I work here in the Rijksmuseum. I must explain that although we are on this location for almost 135 years, centralized collection management only exists here since the year 2000. Before then, we had 5 collecting departments, and they were each organized as a small museum of their own. So each collecting department would have its own curators, own conservators, and assistants. And when we reorganized in 2000, we went to 3 collecting departments, 3 departments consisting only of curators. We got a new conservation and science department. We got a research services department, mainly library, etc. And we got a new phenomenon called bureau collecties. And bureau collections is, everything you can imagine involving collection management. And one of the subgroups in collection management is my department, and it's called Beheer en Behoud. There's no good translation for it, but it's somewhere between collection management and preventive conservation. And this Beheer en Behoud group exists of around 14 to 15 people on 2 different locations. We have, since 2003, we have an off-site storage in Lelystad, 55 kilometers from here. And this group, when we started there, I had to divide the group between Amsterdam and Lelystad. And first I thought, well, we'll just split up and then rotate, and everybody will get the chance to work on a different location every now and then and do other things. But that didn't work out. So now we have a group that is dedicated to the offsite storage, and we have a group that is dedicated to this location. And well, what we do is too much to mention. It's everything with logistics and packing, well, more or less the same you mentioned. That's the situation we are in. And we are now moving towards Collectiecentrum Nederland. You'll hear more about that later on this day. And that is an offsite storage that we will share with other institutions, so we'll have a whole new situation there.
Thank you. I'm Mark Slattery. I'm a senior art handling technician at the National Gallery in London. I've worked there since 93, 94. Prior to that, I worked in various art handling, art logistic positions. Formerly, I was a gallery manager for a small company that imported Indian antiquities, and I moved around the world with my job, and fortunately found myself in a position latterly where I'm doing the same thing with the National Gallery. The art handling department at the National Gallery comprises 11 technicians working on the floor. The structure of the team comprises 3 senior art handling technicians managed by the head of art handling. And then we have 8, presently 8, we've just recruited 3 extra people, so I'm sorry, I'm struggling to remember how many people we employ. But below the senior art handling technicians, we have 3 supervisory technicians, or you might refer to them, understand them as charge hands. So we're in a position where, on a daily basis, we can organise up to 3 semi-autonomous teams to undertake various tasks throughout the gallery. So that can range from dealing with movements within the collection, dealing with packing or decrating objects, and increasingly, and I'm sure all of you probably experience this as well, a pounding and relentless exhibition program, which is taking up more and more of our time. It wouldn't be uncommon to have 2 separate teams working on 2 separate exhibition installations or de-installations at any one time. We have no off-site storage, sadly, or some people consider it to be a blessing. But on site, we have 3 permanent picture storage areas. Those of you, I'm sure you are all aware, National Gallery is a paintings-based collection primarily. We have very few objects. Those that we do have are within what we term the history collection at the gallery, so they're not accessioned items necessarily, but they're under our care. So the art handling team come under the Director of Conservation, and we are a fairly autonomous group of individuals under the Director of Conservation, and so therefore the preventative conservation aspect is very important to us. We have the responsibility for managing those picture storage areas, and in addition to the 3 permanent sites, we also variously have temporary storage areas throughout the gallery in which works that are being displaced normally for exhibition builds and so forth are lodged. Our responsibility is for the safe movement of objects throughout the building and distributing them to our various clients. So that would be a conservation team, a photographic department, in some cases the scientific department, and also for managing all the logistics of works in and out of the collection.
This is more about art handling specifically, but I'm curious how you communicate daily with each other. I know teams can get split up, as you have teams offsite and on-site. When I went to a different museum at one point, they did not have walkie-talkies, which I was used to. That's how we communicated with security, registrars, facilities. So they also didn't have their own computers. So the way we kind of worked around that worked fairly efficiently. We got everyone an iPod Touch, which is essentially an iPhone, but they could use it for email, they could use it for text, we could make them into walkie-talkies. So how you communicate during the day on the floor with the art handlers, especially if they're kind of spread around the building, and also do you have daily touch-based meetings, emails, just your various means of communication would be interesting to me.
Communication, yeah, that's a problem, and it isn't, because the guys that I'm working with, guys and girls that I'm working with, they are professionals, so they know their task. They can operate relatively on their own, knowing what to do. And communication goes by mouth, but by telephone or email. I can say email is not my strongest communication method, because they will stack up and I don't have time to answer, so some of them will be not answered. And so normally it's phone and talking to the guys.
Well, we communicate using our cell phones quite often within the gallery. We did try using walkie-talkies. However, the security team and the building and facilities department pretty much monopolized the 3 radio bands, and it was just driving us all nuts, just hearing this endless chatter, you know, Tango 1 to Tango 3, so on and so forth. You know, where are you? We were expecting you at 10:30, that kind of thing. So we just left the walkie-talkies on the shelf till the batteries ran flat, and then gave them back. So yeah, we use WhatsApp. We have an art handling group. The traffic's not too busy. I have to say, because my boss is just so organized, everything is planned pretty much to within 5 minutes throughout the entire working day. We generate worksheets for various details from the TMS museum system, collections management system. And so that will direct the individual teams to their various tasks via the accession numbers of the paintings and their locations. If that needs to change, then we'll contact people on the phones, or we'll know where they're working. So, you know, typically I will just go up and I'll chase people down and see what they're doing, and maybe take 1 or 2 techs off from that task as things are paring down, and redeploy them elsewhere. We all have gallery email addresses, and the technician's hot seat and various computer terminals who can log on anywhere in the gallery using our individual logins. So we can actually follow traffic that's pertinent to us. We have our own email group as a team, so a lot of traffic whizzes through that email group. And if you're a manager, as I am, you need to keep an eye on that, because although most of the stuff perhaps won't be relevant to me directly, there'll be various things that I need to know about. So yeah, that's how we keep in touch.
I have a question, in fact. One of the problems concerning communication is that it's very difficult. I don't know how it's abroad, but in the Netherlands it's very difficult to get people to get a long-term contract. So we have more and more, we have people coming in who get a contract for 1 year, and then after that they get a second one, and then after that we have to say goodbye to them. And I think If you can get good people and keep them, there's less communication necessary because they get the time to know the building, to know the work, to know what's expected of them. And I think working with temporary contracts is one of the major difficulties concerning communication about the work. I'm curious how that is in the United States, for instance.
I mean, I know there are museums that do more contract, like year-to-year work. That's not a museum I've worked with. We do use, casual laborers at different museums, usually from fine arts shipping companies. But, Well, I think we're going to move on to the second group, and if we have time for more questions, we'll come back. Thank you. Okay. Our second group is from the United States. Again, I'd like each of you to kind of briefly introduce yourself and tell us what your current position or, a position you want to talk about is, and what kind of team you manage or supervise currently.
Good morning, Kevin Marshall. I'm the head of the preparation department at the J. Paul Getty Museum. The Getty Museum has two museums, the Getty Center and the Getty Villa. I report directly to the head of exhibitions. The preparation department and the exhibition department report to the exhibitions department. At the Getty Center, I have a total of 23 staff between the two museums, 19 staff at the Getty Center, and that staff is separated into 4 technical teams. Each of those teams is represented by a lead preparator who the junior and senior staff report to directly. So you've met Mike Mitchell and Rita Gomez. Mike is the head of the installation team and Rita is the head of the packing and crating team. The installation team is responsible for art movement as well as installation. We do all the rigging in-house. We do all the collection care and storage on site. We also manage the transport of the collections. We have 2 vehicles that we manage in the department. We have an off-site warehouse, which we also manage, but it's crate storage and exhibition furniture. And the packing crating team, which is Rita's team, she also shares in art movement, rigging, but her staff and her department do all the packing and crating for the permanent collection and some of the changing exhibitions. We do about 300 loans from the permanent collection a year. Some of those loans are multiple objects, could be 50 photographs, could be 10 paintings. So that 300 can be a little deceiving. And then I have a fabrication team, which is 3 carpenters and 1 metal worker. So we do all of that fabrication in-house. And then I have a team of 2 lighting technicians for the Getty Center. And the Getty Center is, the way the lighting is designed there in the second floor galleries is a louver system that's an operable system. So it functions with daylight as well as artificial light. So they manage those light levels throughout the day on a schedule. My team at the Villa is 4 people. They work a little differently because that's one collection. The Getty Villa is the Antiquities collection, which is the Greek, Roman, and Etruscan collections, whereas the Getty is the European and American art collections from medieval to the present. At the Getty Villa, I have 4 staff that work and do all of the things that we do at the center. They're the art installers, the art movement people, the riggers. So they do all those things together. Yeah, I guess that's about it.
Thank you.
So let's see, my team at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art is 16 people. There's me and 15 preparators that are divided up into, there's 3 supervisors who lead, they each lead a team of 4 preparators under them. And there are different levels of preparators, so there's room for advancement. And it's modeled after the Getty system of having Prep 1, Prep 2, Senior Art Handler, and then supervisor. So, and that is not, there's not set numbers for those right now because our team, so many of them have been there for a very long time and are very experienced, so there's a lot of senior art handlers, a lot of experience on the team. The 3 teams are, we handle exhibition changeouts, rotations, gallery permanent collection rotations, and also transportation around the museum, and some local transport. And so it's organized where one team is kind of the permanent collection team. They pack and unpack outgoing loans, new acquisitions, set up viewings for curators and events for the curatorial departments that have collections on view. And then the 2 other teams really focus on exhibitions. Because a lot of time, we have a really intense exhibition program. I think last year we installed or de-installed 31 exhibitions. So there's a lot going on. And my team, I report to the Director of Collections and Registration, and she oversees 4 departments. So there's a whole separate collections management department that was very small, but because we're getting ready to move out of the buildings, it's grown to 40 people on that team that are packing the permanent collection. And we have off-site storage as well as on-site storage right now. She also oversees collections information and digital assets and registration.
Okay. Oh, this is working. Okay, good. My name's Brent Powell, and I'm a private consultant now, living in New York. But my background has been at several large institutions and companies and managing large projects. So a couple of really large museums I worked in. The first time was the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City. The second one was at the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne, Australia. And in that situation, we were actually moving the collection back into a refurbished building, the old building, which is NGV International, and into a new building, which is NGV Australia, dedicated to just Australian art and Aboriginal art. So we had a huge crew. We had up to 35, we had about 10 full-time staff, a truck and driver, plus we hired other trucks and drivers from the local transport company. And then we evolved into a staff of about 50 total to put in these different teams to do the work back and forth and move into the galleries. Once that was done, then we were established into an exhibition space and a working institution of I was called manager of art services, and we had teams of people working at both sites and such, but we had about 40 exhibitions a year and about 3 to 5 blockbuster shows a year, because the NGV in Melbourne is very large for the Southeast Asian region, and Australia especially draws in very large collections and large blockbuster shows. So anyway, with that, other projects I've worked on, three big museum relocations. One of them was National Museum of Health and Medicine, the Walter Reed campus down in Washington, D.C., and most recently I was working on the Air and Space Museum relocation and refurbishment. But managing crews has always been, wherever I've worked over the years and different jobs I've had, whether it's been an institution or commercial sector, has been managing crews and large technical staff, and in a lot of situations also including the conservators, the registration team, photography teams, that sort of stuff, because we all have to work together. So I like doing that. In my consulting business, I do this a lot for different people that are talking about museum relocations. And I love the challenge of that, the organization, so on and so forth, that we're talking about using schedules and communication and such. It's a very dire thing, and working collaboratively together with networking people together and such is a big issue. But it's the fun part and the challenging part of the job. So.
Again, I think we just follow the same line of questioning, and the one also I'd like to hear from you about how you effectively communicated with your staff, and it doesn't matter if that's email or walkie-talkie, meetings, do you have daily meetings, etc.?
Well, I manage a daily calendar for everybody in the department, which highlights permanent collection moves on a daily basis and all sort of the daily routine things that kind of encompasses all the team's work. And then we have a larger sort of bar chart project management software program that is an overlay with all the exhibition schedules for the year. And so that's kind of the main source for information. Each of the leads meet with their teams daily and go over their projects for the day or for the week. As far as communication within the gallery, we do have radios we use, and that's been sort of the source of communication besides email, but radios on a daily basis. But most people don't carry radios. And so when I look over and I see the bank of radios and they're all still in the bank, then the only way I can communicate is I call security because they have cameras in all the galleries. And then they can tell me where they are. And that seems to be the best. But we've recently just installed Wi-Fi access in all the galleries in the Getty Center and the Villa. So now we can actually use handheld devices to communicate.
We have radios. That's a new thing, and it's been a huge improvement because our campus is ginormous, and there was a lot of time being spent with people literally walking around campus trying to find each other because there was very spotty cell phone reception as well. So the radios have made a huge improvement, even just saving time so that if you need something, there's people all over the building instead of having to walk back to the prep room to get a specialty tool that's not on your install cart. They can ask someone to bring it on their next trip. So that's improved things a lot. We also use Google Calendar to show when people are on what project and who's on what project. We have the biggest thing that's changed for us with communication is that our collections, information, and digital assets team recently developed an app called Mora, or Move Object Request app, that's specifically for my team to track work orders from other departments. It's anytime an object moves, the requesting department, whether it's one of the curatorial departments, and I think we have 16 curatorial departments, and each of them has a separate curatorial administrator. So having all of those requests go through one app has been very helpful, whether it's a curator or registrar, incoming new acquisition or outgoing loan. The activity, anytime an object is moved, a work order is put in through Mora, and it comes to my team. We can assign it to one of our 3 teams, and when the work order is completed through the app, it automatically updates the location in TMS. So for like an exhibition, if things are coming in from offsite for an exhibition, whoever's putting in the work order can just upload a package from TMS to the Mora app, and all the information shows up there. They just put in move to location, and our team has all that information right there on the work order. That's kind of really been a game changer. Then we can also track how long it takes for these tasks, and at the end of the year we have a really good data set for all the projects that we've worked on.
I know two of my predecessors people I worked with came from LACMA, so we modeled some of the things, and then we developed an art preparation installation request form, which was all departments, because curatorial and conservation would come to the art handlers, kind of, hey, can you do this? And they were getting sidetracked throughout the day, so everyone had to submit this request form that had drop-down lists of tasks, and when we received it, it showed that we received it, so it made us accountable, and we would go through that like once a week to see where we stood, but it worked fairly well.
Yeah, it's a great tool, and then also we have every morning a full team meeting, just very brief, 5 or 10 minutes, to make sure people are coming in on time, and that if anything has changed last minute, which does happen a lot, that we can give real-time updates. We also have a longer, hour-long full team meeting, if our schedule allows, every Friday, where we can go over what's coming, big projects that are coming down the pike, and then the schedule for the next week. And then, of course, the supervisors are meeting with their teams to go over daily projects.
For management-wise, there's always been the issue of scheduling and stuff, and it's usually in a bigger project format, in my experience, where you're dealing with office project or Gantt charts and all of these sort of things, which are great. But on the technical side, for staff and stuff, we've always created Excel spreadsheets, our own sort of scheduling, so we can talk amongst ourselves what we're doing. So the exhibition team, people, what you're doing, where you're being, and like the others have said, specific duties and specific tasks, so you can really focus on things and get it scheduled. I agree, the team meeting first thing in the morning to go over things is great, because then you've got everybody focused and headed out to this particular gallery or this particular project, and then you can build from there. Communication-wise, I mean, in the olden days, besides yelling, you could sit there and deal with people. We had beepers, and in Nelson Atkins, we actually used the guard phones in the walls around the gallery, but then you got beeped and said, call so-and-so, 302, and you went to that system. But now, currently, with the phones and such, I really enjoy the texting part, because I just have to text, and usually they're responsive quickly and can get back to me on it. So I like the texting part of it. It's communication, as Mark said before, is such a big deal, and it's so efficient to get good communication skills set up and working, especially with the schedule, so everybody knows what they're doing and talking about it. And I'll throw another bit in, is make people be a part of the scheduling and speak at the scheduling meetings about where they're at and what they're doing, so they take ownership of it, not just be the boss saying, here you're going here, you're going there, you're going to do this, this, and this. Have everybody gather up and be a part of the scheduling and programming, and commit to their working atmosphere. So
we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, so while I have you three up here, I will ask. It's something that now I'm on the collection side of things, so I'm not as affected by exhibitions, but as I talk to my colleagues and when I were in different roles, it seems like and colleagues here in Europe, in the last 5 years maybe, the pressure of exhibitions has really increased, and I wondered if you also have experienced that and wanted to talk about that at all. I mean, it seems like there used to be more of a balance between collections and exhibitions, and it seems like very much exhibition driven now. It's changed.
Yes, yes, and yes. We do, Getty Center does 25 to 30 exhibitions a year. The Villa does about 4 exhibitions a year. And certainly in the last 6 years, we've seen a increase in a desire to do more and more with exhibitions. And The downside to that is the permanent collection suffers, so we don't have the time to spend with maintaining the permanent collection that we used to have. And so, but the result of more exhibitions is we have more exhibitions that overlap. So we're always working on 3 exhibitions at a time. And until about 5 years ago, we were never in a position to have to hire contract help. But it's a kind of a normal activity now for overlapping exhibitions to hire contract people.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true at LACMA too. Although I've only been there less than a year, just listening to the preparators talk about how much more activity there's been in exhibitions. And I think part of it, we're getting ready to close our permanent collection gallery buildings and in preparation for a new building to be built. And people have been talking for a long time, not in our department, but about how activity is going to slow down because of that, but that certainly hasn't been the case. I mean, I think that we've made up for it with exhibition activity. I think that there used to be a lot of time for people to catch their breath between exhibitions and just reset and prepare for the next one, and it's a lot more challenging to find any time to prepare for the upcoming exhibitions. And now, for the first time, my department, we're looking to hire temporary help because, we're doing exhibitions at the same, 2 galleries at the same time, or even there's things on the calendar coming up where there's 3 change-outs happening at the same time, and we just don't have the people, the bodies to do that kind of work.
At the National Gallery in Melbourne, we had essentially grew so much into bigger spaces and more activity. It took on that responsibility. There's so many more exhibitions, so of course we hired the staff and made some more full-time, but the pool of casual staff just kept growing. So after the relocation, it was pretty much, we kept a lot of people on because we were just doing so much work. But I will give the NGV credit for the fact of their changeovers and their collection care for taking care of galleries and changing out permanent collection. We made that a priority as well. So we had those sort of things happening all the time. So you kind of ended up splitting some of the technical staff into being people that were good about taking care of changeovers, permanent gallery changeovers. Other museums I worked with, not quite so much, because there was so much attention to exhibitions, and they made the exhibitions longer. They focused more and more on preparation. We were doing more of the technical work like building walls, painting, this sort of stuff, which you can hire that stuff out to a certain point, but you also need to have the staff there. But permanent collections is a big thing that needs to take care of. And one of my favorites, and several of my colleagues and I are very supportive of, is basic cleaning. Basic going up to galleries and cleaning every morning before the galleries open, this sort of stuff, or having scheduled days of going and cleaning. Not my favorite. Staff never really liked being cleaners. They always said, well, I can't do that, I'm an art handler. Well, sorry. Grab the spray and let's go and clean these galleries, because that's part of our look, part of our presentation out about what we're taking care of. But you have to make the time to do those sort of things. And a lot of people don't like making time to do those sort of things. But anyway.
I'd hope to touch on a lot more, and my also desire is to do a follow-up article for the website that kind of goes more in depth, like Mark Slattery's article did, talking about professional development and just all these other topics that are relevant. But before we say anything else, I did put in some time for questions and answers if anyone has any at this point. If not, I'll pull another question out. Okay, you get another question?
I have one.
Yeah.
I'm curious what kind of project management software you use. I know Kevin just mentioned something. And if you have any project managers, and how you communicate with exhibition designers, how they're integrated.
I have to be careful with this question because my wife is an exhibition designer. But we used to work together very well, actually, at the Getty. Well, we right now for my department, I use a software called Fast Track, which isn't great, but it works very well for what we do. But where the exhibitions department as a whole is looking into a new project management software that will serve all of us. And I just don't know enough about it right now, but I'm happy to share that when we get it, functional and working. But I actually work, and my team actually works very closely with the exhibition design department because it's integral to, installing exhibitions and getting them ready. So from the planning and organization early on, we work with them for casework design, installation, as well as conservation and the registrars. So it's actually a pretty tight community. I mean, we work with all those people very closely.
That's a great question. We don't have project management software, but there's a team of project coordinators, or I guess exhibition coordinators at LACMA that kind of keeps all the projects going. So we have regular full team meetings with conservation, exhibition design, exhibition production, API, my team, collections management, registration, like everyone involved comes together. And then my team works very closely with exhibition design and production to make sure that there's enough space in galleries if we need to bring gantries in or forklifts around casework for specific objects. So while the floor plan is being developed, also case design, we work with them and conservation to make sure that we can access cases and that, talk about the cases that need microclimates before they're built. One thing I was going to actually ask is, internally, there's a bar chart for the whole museum to use for exhibitions, but we've also just started kind of keeping track of our own information organization within our department. And this was something I learned from Kevin's wife, Anne, when I worked for her at the Autry Museum, is how important information organization is. And Anne used to make these gorgeous binders for every exhibition project. She's the master of color coding. And so I stole that idea for our team. When I think a lot of times, like when I got to LACMA, the preparators were not used to having any information about the exhibitions before they went into the galleries to install. And so, maybe they had heard something, but the information had been kept at a very high level and not filtered down to the staff. And I know when I was a preparator going into projects, I like to see the big picture and know what's coming ahead of time, even if I'm not responsible for doing anything. It's just you get a chance to wrap your head around it. And so Dan Wheeler, who's here today, he's a really good organizer of information and good on the computer. So when I found that out, I asked him to be sort of our information organization guru. And so he downloads into a shared Google Drive folder all of our exhibition information before, as soon as we get it, floor plans, checklists, so that the preps can just go in whenever they want and see what's coming, see what they're assigned to. And it's been incredibly helpful. Also, it means that, Dan or other people on his team can be making lists of supplies they need, and that I'm not responsible for doing all of that. It's been incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I'll just follow up on that because I think that's a very good point, is the fact of, one, as manager, getting involved in higher up scheduling earlier on, and going attending exhibition meetings. You have to not say invite yourself, but get invited to these meetings and stuff, so you get a better picture as you're heading into it. So you got a picture of what's coming up, and then sharing that with your staff so they can help, as you just said, get prepared, which takes a load off you because you're not having to go out and buy, whatever, extra dollies or extra, having certain equipment on site to roll a rent, this sort of thing. But you're getting people involved in thinking ahead. But again, the overall picture is then people feel like they're part of it. They're taking ownership in it. And that's what's really good and really important. But again, the schedule seeing the big picture and feeling like you're part of it creates that, collaboration, continuity, and networking within your institution or project. And so,
Where are we? One more.
Okay.
It's always interesting to me seeing that our field is still fairly young, but it seems like in the last, it's slow growth. People need to make more money, obviously, I think. But how much have you seen it change over the course of your career or, in the last 10, 20 years as a profession?
There has been some equity in the salaries in the preparation department since I started in '95, and there was kind of a leveling that occurred early on, and now most of my staff are really at the mid or high range of their salary groups. So I'd say the Getty has been really good about keeping up with that. Just keeping up with current salaries.
I'm not sure, I haven't really been in the museum profession on a large scale for that long, I guess 12 years. And I think that we've gotten better, and I've moved from museum to museum, so it's hard for me to say, but I think some of the museums I've been in, it's definitely been a struggle to try to get people paid in the museum, like comparable to what's happening out in the commercial sector, which I think is, is a goal. It would be a nice goal. But as far as the profession becoming more professionalized, I remember the days when we'd just be no gloves, hanging stuff on nails or whatever, screws or whatever. And I think even just having specialized hardware that we use and hardware that we know the load capacity of, and there's a lot more dialogue and awareness, I think, of making sure that we're doing things safely, having safety standards, training is a thing that's been developed over the, when I first started handling art, I can remember several situations where I literally didn't know if I'd make it home that night because something was happening that was terrifying with not the proper equipment, like having to go to a client's house and install something that weighed a ridiculous amount above a doorway without the right equipment, without a lift, with just a scaffold and not, really, and just having to figure it out and make it happen.
Right.
So I think we've come a long way as a profession.
The salary issues, that's always been something that has been a question asked to me over the years at these conferences and such. And the thing is, it's getting to know what your structure is within your institution. So that meaning if you're a manager working with your HR department, and this is commercially or institutionally working with and seeing and promoting what your staff do, and also trying to get some sort of structure so it's more equally laid out. I've worked for a couple of commercial companies where the structure was, this guy was hired 2 years ago at $25 an hour, this guy was hired 6 months ago at $30 an hour, this guy was hired 3 years ago at $15 an hour, but they were all doing the same work. So get a structure together, work with your HR department, get people to understand, and then you can build from there. Because then you've got, well, as I like to term, personalities aside, you've got to create a structure, and then you can bring the personalities in, and the performance evaluations and those sort of things. Everybody usually hates them, but I really like them because then it gives me a chance to work with my staff to create the performance evaluation, explain what they're doing good at, where they can excel at, and they can also put their 2 bits in about me, like what they like and what they don't like, like you never pay attention to me, and so on and so on. And that's fine, because I want to hear it back too. It's a communication thing, going back to communication. The salary over the years, I've always heard people, I've been working this job for 20 years and I never got a raise. And I said, did you ever speak up and ask? Did you ever open your mouth and get in there? Project yourself? And as a profession, I think all three of us, four of us here, and all of us here together, you're watching it grow and change, and we have to, as managers, emphasize why the importance is and why to hire good people and such. It's, again, even with the diversity description yesterday, some of it is there's a lot of diversity that, levels out people, and there's also the thing that we're all together equal to do this sort of same work. So whether you're male, female, nationality, ethnic background, or whatever, is you still have to do this work. So again, personalities aside, the business of it. Government institutions, the one I've worked for before, two of them, were very good about structuring this sort of salary range. And then you could show up. People get to a certain point, like Kevin said, got to a certain point where people are at the higher end of their range. Well, you can't go up to some point. And then if you want to go further, then you need to take on more responsibilities, not just get a raise. Like I've been working here 3 years and I haven't made any extra money. You're at the top of your range. But if you want to move up, I can give you more responsibility. So it's always an issue, but I've struggled with it myself over the years to get where I've been. But I've always tried to help my staff to say, show me what you can do, let's work together, and I'll try to get you a raise. But you got to tell me what you want to do. So anyway.
Actually, you bring up a really good point, and that's about advocating for yourself. And one thing that I think that is overlooked a lot among our field of preparators is that if we're going to be a profession and be taken seriously, then we need to develop the other aspects of what we do, not just art handling and the technical stuff, but something that I think is important to think about is developing financial management. If you want to be, head of department someday, developing budgets, learning how to do, and then using resources. Like there's great resources out there for developing the administrative side of what you do if you want to rise up in your career, or even just like Harvard Business Review is a great resource, and they have actually an app that you can download that gives you a tip every day, management tip. So I think that's another thing that we can talk about is developing the other sides of ourselves. And if you're young in your career and ambitious, think about those things too, not just becoming an excellent art handler or carpenter or crater or whatever, but also developing leadership skills and things like that to round out, what you do.
Well, I think we're at break time. I appreciate everyone on the panel and appreciate everyone here. Thank you.